So I have to admit, the last time I was here at the Union League, I was giving remarks about my book. And I feel like I'm about to give the same speech 5 years later, except this time I have some history that proves that a broken clock is actually right twice a day, and I hit it right. And the basis of my speech was very simple back in 2006. I did most of my initial work in the union movement here in Philadelphia and in Pennsylvania. And it was the late 60s and early 70s and mid-70s, and it was an extraordinary time for this state. You know, everywhere you went, there were mines and there were mills, there were railroads, they were humming, they were building. It was sort of pre-crisis in Pennsylvania. The industrial unions had done an incredible job creating a wide middle class in this country, and everybody thought the world would never change. And the competition at the time was not a competition as we face today. It was really a competition between the North and the South in our own country. The South sort of trying to lure businesses down with tax breaks, lower non-union wages, incentives. But the good news was whoever won, it was all still within America, because America never lost really too much in that equation. And then the world changed. And I like to say, and what I wrote about in my book, is that this is the third economic revolution in world history. There have only been 3 economic revolutions. The agricultural took 3,000 years to make a transition. The industrial took 300, and this revolution will only take 30. No single generation of people have ever witnessed this much change in a single lifetime. That all of the premises of how we distributed wages in the last century, which was some combination of a market that worked, a government that at times worked, and unions that tried to distribute wages in a sort of a non-governmental, disaggregated fashion. All of those things have fundamentally changed. And we find a very different country than we ever did before. This revolution is televised, it's Googleized, it's digitized. It's on your screens if you have your phones out. It's in your face 24/7. It is relentless. It is unending. And sadly, it's only halfway done, and it's far from over. And we're already beginning to see all of the changes that I talked about in 2006 are just seemingly so apparent now, including what's happened to our own economy. One, I like to say that employers and employees are getting a divorce. The one job in a lifetime economy that made Pennsylvania great. You know, you got a job in the mines or the mills or the post office. You stayed with it all your life. Your employer managed your health care, your benefits, your training, your career, and gave you a gold watch and a defined benefit pension after 30 years. It was a wonderful economy, but it's gone forever. And many people that I know in the labor movement, you know, I'd say sometimes we're more historians than futurists. And I like to remind them that we are as far today from the New Deal as the New Deal was from the Civil War. And I'm sure Franklin Roosevelt admired Abraham Lincoln. He did not build an industrial economy around 1865. We're not going to build a global economy around 1935. This is just a fundamentally different moment, and part of it is that employees and employers are getting a divorce. 2 is the competition isn't between the North and the South. In the United States, that's long gone. We now first had a competition between the North and the South of the border in Mexico, and now it's the South China Sea. And in the third economic revolution, we know the world is flat, and we know that the same techniques that the South used to steal the jobs from the North are the same techniques that China or anyone else will use to take our jobs away. Provide incentives, provide lower wages, provide better tax breaks, provide more entrepreneurial opportunity and less regulation. All the things that the North and the South competed against in our own country are now the rules of competition worldwide. We shouldn't be concerned about them. We shouldn't bitch about them. They're just life. They've always existed. They're always going to be true. That in competition, people are going to do everything they can that's legal to win, and sometimes not that legally. But we're losing not because of illegal activity, just because the same kind of competition between the North and the South is now happening here in America. American companies are not really American companies anymore, and if they are, they won't be for much longer. You know, I was with someone who's a CEO of a service company who tells me now that a majority of his revenues come from overseas. That may be true for Dave Cote as well. I don't think anybody who started as a CEO 5 or 10 or 15 years ago in CED would imagine how global their life would become. And American companies, let's just be fair, salute no flag but their own corporate logo. They are not American companies in the end. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders and to a business that is no longer an American business. And so as Charlie salutes people like Dave, the rare last standing breeds of corporate leaders who actually do something about the country, it shouldn't be an expectation, you know, that corporations, you know, are beholden to a particular country. They are now global citizens. And the last couple things is China is for real. You know, I said this in 2006, China is for real. Everybody's like, well, they're not really for real. They're kind of sort of just getting to be for real. And here we are in, you know, 5 years later, and China is the most dynamic economy on earth. And it has what is necessary in the third revolution. The third revolution is where we move from a national to an international economy, and from, some would say, from muscle work to mind work, from manufacturing to service, knowledge, finance, clean energy, you name it, innovation economy. In this third revolution, countries are teams. And Team USA, our team, has no plan, and China has a brilliant plan. It manipulates its currency. It makes decisions about investments. It's buying commodities all over the world to protect itself against inflation in the future. It is a banker who has an ideology, which doesn't put America in a very good case, because you never want a banker with an ideology. You want them to be concerned about making money, not making your life miserable, which China has, as we saw with Japan, both considerations. They can operate at either time. And finally, I would say that America seems rather sort of struck, some would say paralyzed by all this change, that we haven't found our sea legs, that Team USA is kind of wandering around in the midst of a remarkable series of change with all the assets, with all the resources, with all the manpower, brain power, history, and no plan. And really that's what the Fiscal Commission was the beginning about, of how to make a plan so that America can compete in a global economy. And Dave outlined very well kind of the problems we face and the plan itself that we offered in different variations. So let me just end with what I think are the competitive challenges to all of you, many of whom are business leaders here in this community, but need to be everywhere as well. One is we do have a deficit, a fiscal deficit, and we have to fix it. You know, if we don't fix it, as Dave and others keep saying, the bond market will fix it, the Chinese will fix it, and we won't like the way they fix it. Let's fix it ourselves. We're Americans. We can take care of our own needs. It's not that big a problem, but it is a problem that needs fixing and needs it done soon, because you have more chance to control your own destiny when you're not operating in the middle of the crisis. But there's a second deficit we have in this country, and that's an investment deficit. The way Washington works is there's some very technical word called PAYGO. And what PAYGO means is that in order to get investment capital, if you were a business, to get money to invest in a new plant, you have to cut other things in your own company. And companies are used to doing that, or they go on the market and they raise money. America's not really good at doing this, because we protect everything we've built and then we want to build something on top of it. There's no government program that ever ends, just more that are built on top of it. And so we have this process in Washington, D.C. that to amass investment capital, you have to gore someone else's programs and steal their money. And you can see what it's doing to our inability to invest in broadband, our inability to invest in a smart grid, our inability to invest in water and other systems that are old and deteriorating, or an education system with engineers and scientists. We need to have a second challenge, which is an investment deficit in this country, and we need to find a way, not simply under the current rules. And what you saw when we did the stimulus plan, which a lot of people resented, but this is the way Washington works, since you couldn't get any money for investment for a long time in education or the smart grid or information technology, when the stimulus train started rolling, everybody pulled out every investment need that was, many of them may have been legitimate, and threw it on board the train. You know, and that's how we got Race to the Top. It's how we got other kinds of things. And so we need to appreciate we have an investment deficit. 3 more challenges. Healthcare. We cannot be the only country on earth that continues to put the price of healthcare on the cost of our products of our employers and compete in the global economy. You know, it is a stupid economic plan that our healthcare is employer-based and that it's an added price to the cost of our products. And two is we can't pay 5 to 7% more of GDP for healthcare than any other country we compete with in the world. I mean, it's just a baseline that is way too high. And so what is clear, although the Commission took certain steps forward to try to control costs, in the end we have to restructure our healthcare system. You can decide whether it's Paul Ryan's plan to voucherize the federal system, you can Newt Gingrich's plan to go to Switzerland, Andy Stern's plan to go to Germany or Norway or Taiwan or Singapore. But this healthcare plan is not going to be patched together anymore, and we can't operate at 5 to 7% more of GDP. Last two considerations. Our exports around the world are taxed when they arrive at other countries through consumption VAT taxes. And our imports and their exports are not taxed. So in every country around the world, when Dave Cote sells a product and it comes into the country, it is taxed as a VAT. And yet when they send their products to the United States, we don't have a VAT, there's no tax. We have just structurally put ourselves in a position to, again, not compete in a global economy. And I know many politicians around the world, in Washington, D.C., hate the idea of a consumption tax or a VAT tax as the third rail for spending. If we don't do what our competitors have done around the world, not just about the corporate tax rate, which needs to be lowered, but also about how we pay for things and how we advantage our exports and disadvantage imports, we, again, are going to lose. Team USA is going to lose in this global economy. So those are the challenges I see. Balance ourselves in terms of our fiscal plan, balance and create an investment plan, deal with a healthcare system that makes us truly uncompetitive, lower the corporate tax increase, tax rates, but also deal with consumption taxes so we can make American businesses competitive again and make sure we get our healthcare system under control. That's what we need to do in America. It is much bigger than just our fiscal plan. This is the greatest nation on earth, but that doesn't mean you always win.